Welcome back to another episode of Dying Out Loud. I'm your host, Kris Saim, and today I've got my friend Danielle here with me. And this episode is a tribute to the people whose vulnerability really becomes like a beacon of hope for others. I met Danielle when I was just coming out of a 3-day coma and I was in the ICU during my first diagnosis. And a great friend of mine was nice enough to bring Danielle into my life. Throughout the course of time that we've known each other, we've seen each other's families grow. We've watched each other become advocates and discussing things like survivorship and really how sharing your story can not only give you a sense of hope, but can also create a ripple that will change lives. So from that hospital room introduction to a shared mission of awareness and mentorship, this conversation is about courage, community, and the power of showing up. Danielle, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Kris.
It's so great to see you, and it was good to catch up right before we jumped in here today. There's so much to talk about. Obviously, the interesting meeting that we had, I would love to let you share a little bit about your experience and your journey with colon cancer. And we'll just go with the flow and see where our conversation takes us today. But I'll start off just by asking you a question. At the time that we met, which now it's been about 12 or 13 years, what was going on for you that kind of created a sense of urgency and a passion for reaching out and engaging with other folks who were experiencing colon cancer as well, or cancer in general?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Yeah, you're right. We go back 12 years, 13 years. What was I doing at the time? I was, so when we met, I was probably 10 to 15 years into my personal journey. And I was 17 when I was diagnosed with colon cancer the first time. So very young and in high school as a junior. And I very much went through that experience alone. Not in the sense I didn't have a medical team or friends or support, but it was just so rare. People didn't know what to do with me. And I was living my life to where cancer was just this annoying thing I was trying to get through so I could go live my life. And that's how I was a survivor for the first several years of after I entered the cancer world. But about 7 years into my journey, I had become part of a group called the Colon Club, and it introduced me to other young adults who'd had colorectal cancer. Many of us who'd been told we're the only ones in the country, this never happens, you're so rare. So I think I had met that group. I'd shared my story publicly for the first time. Like I was on a calendar and it went all across the country and then press releases and articles were written about my story, and it changed me and it gave me purpose and mission. It just brought this healing where cancer wasn't just this random thing that had happened to me in high school. Like it just showed me, okay, like maybe this was kind of part of my mission in life and purpose. And I think anytime you go through something super crappy, you're like, what purpose is this going to serve? And so
Right.
I think I had started to stumble into that. And so we met as I was a few years into just joining community and realizing, wow, I just shared my story and it brought me a lot of healing. But I also realized how many people out there needed to meet each other, and especially when you're young. And so that's where I remember, our mutual friend told me about your case and how young you were. And I was like, I have to meet him. Like I have to let him know he's not alone, because I felt so alone for all those years. And I just wanted you to have hope and somebody who you could reach out to and just know, okay, like she can relate, or I could put you in touch with somebody else if you had a story, something about your story that connected with another friend of mine. I just was like, there's a whole network of us out here and we both happen to be in the same city. And so, yeah, I think that was why I just reached out.
I love that for so many reasons. I think to your point, even though when you first had your experience with colon cancer, you were much younger. You were 17. I was 38. They still called it 38 being young adult cancer. And that was such an oxymoron to me because here I knew your story. I'm like, no, young adult colon cancer is when you're 17 years old and that still, whenever I was first diagnosed, they're like, oh, that just never happened. So I'm like, oh, no, it does happen because I know someone who that happened to. And it's interesting, you have just over your shoulder a sign that says no more too young for cancer. It's so true. It's so true. We obviously hear about situations where babies are born with like rare leukemias and things like that. And it obviously affects people of all ages and it really doesn't discriminate, right? It goes for men, women, children. Doesn't matter if you're black or brown or white. It can come for you when you least expect it. And I think for those of us that, like for yourself, finding that group of people that you connected with, which by the way, I have that colon club calendar that has you in it. It's interesting because obviously that calendar is outdated at this point, but it was one of the first things that kind of acknowledged you brought that with you when you came to the hospital. And it was really for me something that just showed not just one person, but there were 12 people featured across every month. And even beyond that, there were more people that have had or this shared experience and they know about the different types of chemo that you might be going to try, and they understand what radiation looks and feels and all of those things. At that point in time, I had never actually gone to the hospital for any medical reason other than a kidney stone in my life. I had never had a broken bone, so I didn't know what any kind of surgery would look like. And here I was having this major surgery where I was cut really from the center of my chest all the way down past my belly button and had this ostomy bag that I had no clue. I just knew that I had never dealt with anything like that. And I really didn't want to deal with it for however long I was going to have to deal with it. But all of those things and all of that uncomfortability, having a connection with someone was so valuable who actually knew. My mom had been in the healthcare field her entire life, so she was fully well aware of what cancer looked like and how it shows up and the effects of it. But there's something about when it's like your own child or your own family member, you let your medical like knowledge slip out the door and you become like the caretaker or the patient advocate in the hospital. And she very much played that role. But the more I learned about colon cancer and the impact that it has on people's lives, the more I realized that finding strength and doing something myself to give back was probably going to be something that would bring me energy and it would bring me joy. And I think through all of the different things that I've experienced, I've been a mentor for other newly diagnosed folks before. I've been a fundraiser, and I think collectively I've probably raised about 70 grand over the course of my first diagnosis through now. It's something that is just really important to me because I think if we look at the trends right now, younger people are the fastest growing demographic for colon cancer. Again, however it is figuring out a way to invade our DNA, it's doing it. And the more money that we have for medical research, the better off we're going to be in the long run. But I think sharing your story and having a dialogue about it, that's 9/10 of the battle, right? We need more people to have awareness of it, the way that you can do early detection, the different methods for, you don't have to have a colonoscopy necessarily to detect it early. Cologuard has a great non-invasive product that people can use. And there's just so much out there. But if we're not talking about it and how it has impacted us, we're all missing kind of an opportunity to learn and grow and hopefully prevent that number from continuing to climb.
Yeah, we see that too with the impact of story. And I think that relays into just why I'm so passionate about sharing your stories. There's a group called the National Colorectal Cancer Roundtable that really has even studied this, and motivators to getting people screened and information education is essential. But you and me or anybody out there, and they don't even have to have a diagnosis, but anybody out there that says, oh, I'm getting my colonoscopy today, or my doctor said it's time, I'm 50, I'm healthy, but I went ahead and did the FIT test or the Cologuard test or whatever, that story that you share or post will go so much further in somebody else's life to say, oh, I should do that or I should consider that. I've just seen that over the years. I think that's why I'm passionate about people speaking out. Obviously, cancer patients like you and me sharing our stories. And there's a lot of layers to things we can go through. But even just the fact of here's what happened to me and here's what I'm going through. And this area we deal in with butts and poop and parts is so taboo, unfortunately. And
It's just
so
so true. It's
the
so
more
true.
we can the more we just put words to it and say, yeah, we're going to talk about poop today. And people sometimes, like, if they don't know me, they just look at me. And the way I talk to my kids about it, especially, they're like, who is this woman? I was like,
She's
this is going to save
crazy.
somebody's life. This saved my life being open about it. Yeah, I think
Agre-
you're right on. Just, stories are more powerful than we know. And the few returns where we do have somebody reach out with a comment or let us know the impact, those that feedback always ricochets, like it carries a heavy weight. And I always like to think, okay, for every one person who actually told me the impact that something I shared or I did made, there's hopefully 10, 20, 30 people behind them. They just never let me know. Like I just have
That's
to
right.
hope that.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's a ripple. And you mentioned a couple of things there that I really appreciate. That, just the acknowledgement that sharing your story is going to impact or benefit someone else. I think that is, I've spent my entire career in advertising, and advertising has evolved so much in the 3 decades that I've been a part of this industry. But what we spend the majority of our time talking about today is storytelling, whether it's storytelling to a client with data or storytelling to a consumer using another consumer's shared experience. And that's exactly what this is, right? Like, we're sharing experience to help educate, to enlighten, to give people who might not be as fortunate as we were to have a support group that are out there fighting this or doing this on their own, just to know that there are other people that you can reach out to or engage with to have conversations about, any of your fears or your what ifs or what's next. It's such a great thing, I think, to be able to not only easily find people like that, but when someone's injected into your life in that way and they can be that support system, it's one of those super lucky things that you just need to feel thankful for. It's not lost on me, obviously, that your journey has really created your life's work, right? Like,
It has. Yeah.
you're in this every single day now. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing for Fight Colorectal Cancer and really how you landed there.
Yeah. Story. So that group I just told you about, I had a friend who knew about Fight CRC and they were coming through Kansas City, where I live, and looking for survivor stories and said, hey, this would be a great fit for you. So I went and met him and shared my story and did the video and did the blog and did the pictures. They, the team there, we just made a connection, and then they recognized I have a communications background and they needed support. And so I started taking on some projects here and there, and then eventually joined the team full time. So I've been involved in some capacity for the past 12 or 13 years. I think right when we met, I was transitioning to work with Fight CRC. So today I get to serve as our vice president of disease awareness. So I'm really focused on really education for anybody in this country, and everything from prevention education, like what we just talked about. So making sure people know, okay, here's the symptoms, here's the signs, here's your screening options based on your risk. We have screening quizzes and brochures, and we do all kinds of stuff. So that's a big piece of what I do. And then I get to head up something called Guide in the Fight, which, Kris, you can imagine how much of a passion project this is. But it is our educational campaign where from the day someone is told you have colorectal cancer through the end of life and or survivorship care, we have something for you. We have a resource, we have a web page, we have a brochure, we have tips on your side effects. We have somebody who you can meet who can relate. We have videos, we have all kinds of content to help people know they're not alone. There's a lot of misinformation out there about this disease. It's one hashtag away from being convinced that this oil will cure your cancer. So that's a big part of what I do is just, hey, let's get reliable information out there, vetted by the experts. We have some of the world's top experts and scientists that want to work with us at Fight CRC just based on our reputation. So that's a big part of my everyday. You're right. Like I'm a patient and then I do this full time. I feel very honored to be able to just hold down this role and to serve the community in this way. Because one thing I tell my team is, I bring my patient perspective into our work every day, but I am one patient out of 1.2 million survivors who have had other experiences and they've had things I've not experienced. And so let's make sure that a variety of voices are represented in our materials and just in the community. So, yeah, that's a big part of my everyday these days. And yeah, it's been pretty rewarding.
I love that. And on behalf of people with colon cancer everywhere, I truly thank you and Fight CRC for the work that you do. Quite honestly, without groups like yours, I don't think that the storytelling that we do would be as impactful or powerful as it is with your help in shaping that story and managing where it's being delivered to and landing with the right audience. And for those folks that benefit from all those connections to just being able to access resources where they can read and learn themselves about what might be next or what symptoms to be looking for or, what side effects to be paying attention for. All of that information is so empowering as a person that, is living with the disease that it really helps how you show up at those doctor's appointments. It helps you figure out the questions that you want to ask. And ultimately, it can really make or break, like just how well aware you are of what is happening with your body right now. You mentioned that you're doing this while you're still an advocate, a patient. What does your cancer journey look like right now? Where are you at with your health and everything?
Yeah. So I'm in my 24th year of survivorship. I am three-time survivor now. So I can relate in this sense. My first diagnosis was 17 in high school. That was a stage 3. And then about 7 to 8 years after that, got blindsided with a second cancer. For me, it was caught early. So it was caught as a polyp that was becoming, it was called an adenoma. So the polyp had already become cancerous by the time we found it during the colonoscopy. So had surgery to remove it. I did not need any further treatment after that. And so I had that second cancer when I was 25. And then a little over 2 years ago, I had deja vu again, where I was having yearly colonoscopies. So I have Lynch syndrome. That's probably important for people to know. I didn't know I had Lynch syndrome until about 12 years into this, but I do indeed have it's a gene that puts me at a higher risk for colorectal cancer, among others. So we know that's what's behind my cases now. And so I was getting yearly colonoscopies to try and catch anything before it would start to be cancer. And within a year, we didn't catch it soon enough. So I went from nothing to another stage 1 cancer a couple years ago. And after that, I was like, I'm almost 40. I was 39, mom of two, I'm busy. And all of the treatment I'd had in my 20s was catching up to me. I had radiation. So I was having a lot of side effects. Lars is pretty common. So if you've had rectal radiation or anything like that, it's just my quality of life was pretty poor and I was pretty sick a lot. I just did not feel well. So I made the decision a few years ago to go ahead, have obviously the cancer removed, and I had a permanent ileostomy put in. So I had never had an ostomy, and that was like the worst case scenario when I was a teenager. And it took me a couple decades to get there and embrace it. But it is one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life for my treatment because the ileostomy gave me my life back. And I can now run again. I can exercise. I can eat way more food than I could have before. And it also, for me, took away some of the fear I don't think I realized I was living with until it came out. The fancy word is prophylactic. So I have had hysterectomy, oophorectomy. So I've had like just about every organ you can remove out because of my cancer risk. And when they took the rest of my colon, all I have now is a small intestine. And so it leaves me in this place where if it comes back a fourth time, it's it's pretty probably severe because it's in an organ I can't live without and it's aggressive. And we'll tackle that when it comes. So I hold this fear of relief that every organ that's majorly at risk is now out. That was a relief, but then I also hold at the same time the fear of, okay, if this comes into a different organ, then I need to be ready to have some hard conversations. And so I'm always prepared for that. In the back of my head, I have a funeral plan in my Google Docs that I update yearly of like how I would like it to go, just so my family knows. Not that I expect it right now. You think like this as a survivor, but that's in the back of my head. But in the front of my head, I'm doing really great. I'm in remission. I'm a survivor. And I'm feeling the best I've felt in a long time. And I'm trying to stay on top of all of the things, all of the appointments that I need to go to try and stay healthy.
Well, I'm so thankful that you are healthy and that you were willing to share all of that. It's interesting because the people that are listening might be in varying states of their comfortability. Whenever I was first diagnosed with cancer, I think my family was just getting to a point where they stopped referring to it as the C word. Like it was not even a word that we like talked about at the dinner table. And there was such a stigma about just saying cancer. That's literally what I grew up in. So whenever I had it, it was everything I could do I pride myself on authenticity. That's how I show up for people. I want to encourage people to show up authentically to me as well. And part of that is talking about things like fart and poop and things like that you just don't talk about. And when I had my ostomy, I don't know if the technology has evolved, but occasionally it makes a noise on its own. It's essentially a fart that it's doing. And so one of the ways
and you
that
can't
I
hold it
got
in.
there is no holding
There's
it
no
in.
warning and no holding that one in. No.
Talk about embarrassing moments. I remember being in a convention it was the dead silent moment in the speaker's monologue. And Walter is what we named my ostomy, let out the loudest noise ever. And of course, people thought that it was a fart. So they all turned and looked, and I was mortified. And shortly thereafter, I left the room because I was so embarrassed. And when I'm in a meeting with people, or at that time when I was in a meeting with people, I would at least set the tone. So if there was a noise that was going to come out of Walter, I wanted people to know that he has a mind of its own. He makes noise when you least expect it, and just ignore him. And I was in control of the situation. But in that
Right.
particular situation that I just shared with you, I was not in control and I was very embarrassed because you just don't do that in a
Yeah.
public place
Yeah.
full of business people. But things like talking about the things like that we don't talk about, and we all know everybody poops. There's a book on it. But getting comfortable talking about those topics. And for me, what has evolved into really just being comfortable talking about cancer, and even more personally to me, is being comfortable about talking about death. You mentioned that you had a funeral plan. I have the same thing. It's quite honestly, it's been in place since 6 months after. I know that my kids and my husband are taken care of whenever I go. They just have to make one phone call, and my work will take care of the rest of making sure they get the money that they're supposed to be getting. So they have nothing really to worry about other than just the loss. And after losing my dad, I realized that I wanted to ensure that all of my people were tucked in. And that's really what eventually led to these conversations, is just making sure that I let people who have positively impacted me, I just want to be able to share the words from my mouth and not have them read it in a letter that I wrote or that they get after I'm no longer here. But I want to have the conversations now. And with that said, every episode, I share a little personal message from myself to my guest, something that kind of highlights just the impact that they have made on me. And Danielle, you're no different. Even though our paths have diverged, we went in different directions. We obviously still are. We're brothers and sisters in the journey that our lives have taken. And we certainly share the passion about that storytelling and advocacy is a top priority for both of us. I'm going to share that message with you now, and then I'll give you a chance to react to that. And then we'll be on the home stretch and wrapping things up. Danielle, I want to thank you for being the very first person to sit with me, not as a doctor, not as a nurse, not really even a friend, because at that point in time, we didn't even know each other, but just as someone who had been there and experienced the fears and the tribulations that I was in the process of experiencing. You showed up in my hospital room the day after I emerged from a coma, and you shared your story, your truth, and just offered your presence in a way that I will never forget. You could easily have said no to that meeting, but instead you walked in with your heart wide open, and you really gave me the permission to imagine what my future could be like. You helped me see that having a cancer diagnosis really at any stage, it doesn't have to be the end of your story. And quite honestly, for me, it was the beginning of my story. It's something that it was the start of something that was extremely and deeply meaningful to me, not just as someone who was experiencing their own cancer journey, but also just as a human. You were the first person to teach me that advocacy is and should be personal, that storytelling isn't just an act of bravery or a display of courage, but it's actually necessary to live a fully authentic life. And ultimately, that being vulnerable can change lives. And one of the things that I've learned from showing up for people in a vulnerable way is that it even changes your own life. Because of that day and because of you, I think I found my voice much more quickly than I would have on my own. I learned how to share my story. I stepped into mentorship, and eventually it led me to this podcast. So even though we may not have walked side by side through all of the last 12, 13 years, you were there for me in the moment that I needed it most. And that moment was 100% a turning point for me and for my life. And I want you to know that your presence, the courage that you showed up with, and your generosity, you were that catalyst for me. So from the bottom of my heart, I truly thank you for showing up that day. And I just couldn't let time pass any longer without sharing with you. That day absolutely made a difference to not only my life in that moment, but ultimately to who I've become. And without a moment like this, you would never know that I felt that way. And from the bottom of my heart, that is the truest message that I can shape into anything that sounds like not nonsense.
Wow. Thank you, Kris.
It's a pleasure to be able to spend this time with you, to get to catch up and to share that. I always like to pivot to my guest after that and just offer you the opportunity to share with the people that are listening anything that you carry with you and that is top of mind, what you want people to know about dealing with colon cancer, or maybe even showing up for someone who is experiencing their own journey. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm a writer, but words escape me with that. It was really beautiful. And thank you just for the time you took to put words to that. I think what's coming up for me is like, we just never know the impact we are making on other people. And so, like you said earlier, just beautifully to show up with vulnerability and your true self. And I think people to know that takes work. I think when I was first diagnosed, I couldn't have shown up in your room. It took me time to find my voice, and it took me time to experience that healing. There's a phrase, hurt people, hurt others. But I think the flip side of that is healed people heal others, and helped people help others. And so I think it's just beautiful to know I will not take credit for all of your advocacy and amazing work. That is not on me. That's you. But to know I even played a role to help be that spark and to help you find your voice is such an honor. And just, I didn't set out to do that day. I just wanted you to know, hey, like, you are really important and you matter. And I'm so sorry the sucky thing happened to you. It happened to me too. I think sometimes we underestimate the impact of presence. And I think that was a really great word where sometimes, and I guess this is what I'd say to anybody listening, curious how to support somebody in their life, whether it's they're going through cancer or just like a traumatic, sucky time. I get asked a lot, what should I do for my friend who's hurting? And a lot of times it's through the lens of what should I buy them or what should I cook them? And I think that's great. They need help. But sometimes they just need your presence and they just need you to show up, even just for 5 minutes, and just be like, hey, I'm gonna be here with you in this. And that was that day where we met. It was the short, I don't want to stay in the ICU too long because you just come out of a coma. But it was, and I almost didn't go because I didn't know you. And I had to tell myself, hey, it's okay. You don't know this guy, but you know what he's going through. And so just show up for a few minutes and give him hope. And that was enough. And so I think thank you for validating that I told myself this has to be enough. It's okay. I don't even think I brought you a gift. I brought you a calendar. It's something. Yeah, I didn't show up with a gift basket. I just showed up with myself and my story. And sometimes I think that's the biggest gift we can give each other.
That was 100% the ultimate gift. And again, it's a gift that keeps on giving, because I would like to think that day you started your own ripple, and I have carried a little bit of that ripple forward with me and started to create a ripple of my own. And I hope that as people look back on the time that we've spent together, the messages that we've shared with each other, that if they carry something forward, it's that the ripple has to continue. And whatever the way is that you pay that forward, that is the lesson. If we didn't continue acts of goodness, acts of gratitude, acts of love, if we never carried those things forward, that I don't even know if the journey of life is even worth having, because there's so many lost moments that you miss out on without all of that good paying it forward.
Yeah.
This has been an amazing conversation. I'm so glad that you were able to join us today and to be able to share. We're absolutely going to put the Fight CRC website address on the back end of our podcast so that everybody can reach out should they need it, or use that as a place to refer people that they know are experiencing this for themselves. But I definitely want to send more people that direction, because it is a great organization, not just for providing the multitude of resources that you all provide, but for ultimately connecting people with a community that is like-minded and that understands the struggles and what it looks like to wake up every day and not feel yourself, or today's another day where I'm going to be nauseous and I'm going to be glued to the bathroom. And it means the world to people. And even for people that may not have a rich support system of their own, you can and will find a support system if you reach out and take advantage of the resources that are provided. So I definitely want to encourage that. I did the same thing myself, and also I was fortunate enough to be blessed with you coming into my world at that point in time too. So definitely appreciate that. Folks, I hope you carried something out of this call today, and if nothing more than being that person that just shows up. Danielle shared there's a number of ways that you can show up for people, and I like to tell people whenever they're, especially the people that are afraid of doing or saying the wrong thing, you know what's always welcome is just showing up and sitting in silence. You don't have to say a word. Watch a TV show together, listen to some music. No words need to be exchanged at all, other than I'm here for you, I love you, I appreciate you, I'm proud of you. That's all anyone is ever looking for, is just an acknowledgement that they exist and that what they're going through is recognized, that's all you have to do. You don't have to have all the right answers. You don't have to be the best chef. You just need to be capable of showing up and sitting in silence some days.
Yeah.
I think my last thought for today is sometimes I think the greatest act of courage is simply just that. It is showing up for someone in the unknown or the ambiguity of their situation and just making space for that person to say or share what they want to. Or if they just want that space to be filled with silence, just sit in the silence with them. Ultimately, share a story that has saved you, that has moved you past something. Listen to that story from that individual. But again, the most important thing is let's just show up for each other. That is it for today. I hope you'll join us again next week where we peel back the curtains and we have more of these important conversations that oftentimes we just don't make the time for. I'm your host, Kris Saim. This has been Dying Out Loud. My guest was Danielle Ripley-Burgess of fightcolorectalcancer.org. And we're signing off until next week. Have a great week, everyone.